Yeah, welcome to my talk, being an art detective, tech art detective, to be more specific. So I'm Simon, him, and here are some of my shipped titles. And I'm now a VFX artist, but I started as 3D artist 18 years ago in the industry, and this is one of my first models. This was before my career. Later in my career, I did models like these. But very early in my career, I started, next to being a 3D artist, I started to actually do some VFX on the side. So here is one of my first effects for the add-on for Sacred 2. And I was very proud back then on this explosion, but I didn't really know what I did back there. But it was still fun, and it never let me go. And nowadays, I do more, these are more some recent works. And in 2015, I switched to being an full-time VFX artist. The question is now, why am I here? And the answer is, I have a blog, and this blog is about game art tricks. So it's about tech art stuff. And sometimes I get invited because of this blog to events like this. So thank you for that. By the way, if you see in these slides something golden like this, you can click on it. It's a link. And also, there's a link on the slides. You will get it later. So you have all the slides. Don't take notes. And for Twitch, there should be something posted in the channel to follow it up right now. So this is my blog. Just a show of hands. Does anyone know this blog, this website? Nobody? That's fantastic. Then everything you see now will be new. Fantastic. So what I'm doing here is basically, these are 83 articles about cool tricks in games, and they are just amazing. And I can say so because I mostly did nothing of those. I just documented. So it's not that I'm bragging here. It's really, so what I do, for example, let's see, there's, for example, let's see, where's the angel? Yeah, here, from Diablo 3, for example. I really liked these wings in Diablo. Let's hope the video loads. I really like these wings in Diablo, and I asked myself, oh, how would you do this? And then I try to find out, and then I document this journey, looking at the textures and explaining as good as I can how this whole process works. Like, for example, like, oh, there's some shader moving this thingy, and then you squash and stretch the geometry, and so on and so on. So I try to document it for other people like you, how it works, and I'm learning a lot by this as well. So it's just a nice resource. And like I said, because of this blog, some people know it, and then they say, oh, Simon, you like tech art. Will you do a little presentation for us? And sometimes people ask, how did you find this out? How did you get the textures? How did you get the meshes? How do you see the wireframes? And blah, 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 blah. So all of these things. So I would like, and this is why I'm here today, I would like to present you with this presentation my ways of finding out, of revealing the secrets of these games, basically. And or Simon's ways to investigate cool stuff in games. And first, step one, you have to observe something. And this is something you have to develop, like a developer eye, kind of. Yeah, you have to see if there is actually something special in the game which you would like to observe. I guess you already have it because you all are game developers. And then next step will be, that's the easiest one, you ask around, you ask your friends, colleagues, if you can. You do some own research. You use maybe mod tools if available, and you can also inject yourself into the rendering process and find out as much as you can about these games. And I would like now go through all of these things in a bit more detail on an example which I took from my blog, and explain to you how I actually found out about these things. So step one, observe. For a regular person, non-game developer, this might be a tree. And here we just see a little bit nice smoke. And this would just be a nice little background from Homeworld 2. But game developers maybe would raise some questions, like, why does it look so fluffy? How many polygons does it have? Can I see a wireframe, please? The tree, right? The smoke. we know maybe that when you have a particle and it is lit, usually the color changes when the light changes around the particle changes for all pixels the same way. But here we see a nice little gradient rolling over, right? So it looks a bit volumetric. So how is this possible? This is from a Company of Heroes, a very old game. We know back then they wouldn't have volumetric particle effects or something. And this here is Homeworld 2, also an old game. And this is a whole sky sphere. And when you know Homeworld is a huge universe, and they surely did not have 4K textures for their backgrounds. So how did they achieve these things? So all of these questions could be raised. And then is the question, how do we actually find out how stuff is done? And the first thing is we ask around. So did I, when I saw this tree. This is actually an original post for me in 2012, when Steffen Unger and his team posted Airborne. It was a mod for Unreal 3 back then. And yes, this is the Airborne studio. Airborne, maybe you know it. It's a huge outsourcing studio from Germany. They do amazing work. You can find the stuff on ArtStation. I recommend it a lot. And they posted their little project, and I saw these trees, and I was like, wow, this is so cool. But I don't really. I mean, I was a 3D artist at the time, but I can't even see like where's the wireframe, how many polygons, and so. An artist posted this, and this was a bit surprising to me. So we have this blob, and then we have this little crossed plane thingy with some leaves on it, and we can see that this little crossed geometry thing is scattered on the surface of this blob geometry and then randomly rotated, and that is nice. Still, we as developers, we know that usually when you have planes, they look like this, like they're very ugly shaded, right? I mean, this is not at all what we saw in this nice tree before, right? So, and it baffled me, and so I asked around, and I asked Steffen, which I just mentioned. He's the founder of Airborne and the head chief of this project. And I asked, like, how, yeah, just how? And he said, well, there is, back then it was a 3ds Max script normal thief, but it's down here, there's a link. And what it actually does is it takes the normals of this blob thing and basically copies them over to all these planes. So the planes, they stop using their own normals, but they are now aligned to the direction of the underlying blob surface. And then you get this beautiful little shaded detailed blob. And this was, to me, this was amazing and blew my mind, because up to that moment I would never have dared to change the normal of a geometry because it's sacred, you know. Some mathematicians did it that way, and 3D Studio Max, I would not dare to change it, but actually it makes sense. And yeah, I found it out by just asking around, and that's a good way. And maybe sometimes you see something in the game and maybe you even know the developer. That's of course the golden ticket. And maybe another example where you can use this when you search for how to do stylized grass, you will find this very often, that you actually change the normals of the grass plane, because here we can see it's a little bit of an ugly intersection with the ground. But if you align the planes of the grass with the normal of the terrain, no, if you align the normals of the plane of the grass with the normals of the terrain, then it blends better. Looks way better. So this is a very, very common example actually for that. Okay, so now we revealed this secret. So here's another example where a little bit of research helped me. So research, aka using Google or any search engine you want to name. So just, yeah, I prepared a little extra example. So this here, there's a little particle on the left, and this is how normally particles react to light, right? It's a bit boring, it's just, you can see. And on the right side, we have, a nice gradient, and it looks like, oh, there's a little bit of volume to the smoke, right? And this is exactly what the Company of Heroes people did. And I was asking myself, oh, how is this possible? And luckily, game developers often like to share knowledge, like we do right now, right? That's actually very, very nice about this industry in general. I love it. And if you are lucky, you will find documentation from themselves. And so I did for Relic. Relic is the company who did Company of Heroes. They documented their effect system. How nice of them. And so when you search this PDF, again, there's a link down there, you can click it if you want, you will find out that instead of just a quad with 4 vertices as a particle, they use a 5 vertex particle. There's a little extra point in the middle. And then they fold basically the normals outwards for the outer vertices, which looks then like this. I hope you can see this. So left there's the normal boring particle, but if you have one little vertex in the middle and then you fold the normals outside, then you get this fake shading, which is very effective for just adding one more vertex, right? And no more extra data. And you know, I have the suspicion that at Epic, at Unreal Engine, someone like this, as did I, because they included a function with one little check mark. You can actually add this shading, or kind of similar shading, with just one checkbox by going into the material and enabling generate spherical particle normals. Down here there's a little detail where exactly you can find these things. So that's fun. And while I was researching this, I found something even more impressive, to me at least. They have another thing. Unfortunately, this is Cascade, and Cascade is the old particle system. Now there's Niagara and Unreal, but they added this function about the emitter normals mode. And what they do here is they don't change the normals of the particles per particle, just without any context. They take into account the whole particle cloud and then assign basically spherical normals to that. So the particles here, the normals point up here, and the particles here, it's basically exactly the same what we saw before with this blob for the tree, where the normals of this blob were copied to the little crossed planes which were scattered around. But here it's just particles, and suddenly this whole, even without a texture, this looks, I mean, impressive is a big word, right? But it looks nice, right? It looks very shaded and gives a very nice volumetric impression. So it's just a funny idea without adding too much new resources, and I really liked it. So that's it. And by the way, this again, here's a lot of golden stuff here. This is a list about really cool other resources from game developers. For example, the Brutal Legend PDF is also very cool. And one thing which I found interesting is 1 to 4 here. These are all, it's basically they gave a talk and then give you the slides as PDF or something, right? But Platinum Games, actually, they have a really nice blog in general with a lot of cool information. And part of that is VFX stuff. I collected all the VFX articles here. And when you go on it, you will see that they talk in detail about their stuff. And they also, like here, they show some textures and they go, and this is on the official company blog. It's fantastic. And I mean, it's a Japanese company, right? But they write in English. How nice of them. So it's a very good resource. So here you find some stuff. And of course, number 6, GDC YouTube channel. That's so obvious with that. I had to include it. And rendering wounds in Lab 4 Dead is fantastic and very impressive from a technical level, but I don't know if I should show it here because Twitch and because it's a lot of blood and gore and inner organs and all this stuff. But technically impressive. Okay, so step 4, another way of finding out how stuff is done is using mod tools. And mod tools are tools for mods. I don't know. So, I don't have anything more to say about this slide. So this again is Homeworld 2, and they have, I don't know if you played it, it's a space game, and they have wonderful backgrounds. I mean, space, we mentioned, it's just black and white and the little stars. It's boring, but actually it looks like this in the game. It's fantastic. And like I said, back then, old game, they most likely didn't have like 4K textures to plus the whole sky sphere around you, right? And also, in general, when you, this is one bigger view on it, when you zoom in, sometimes you can see, and I hope you can see this, maybe it's a little bit hard to see from back there, but just believe me. So this is a little gradient, and when you look at this closely, you will notice this does not look like painted with a brush in Photoshop. It looks a bit more interpolated, actually, mathematically almost. And I looked at this and I was like, what's going on there? I couldn't find out on my own until I did a little bit of research and found a thread where they talked about modding tools, like it was a modding community. And there someone wrote, the tool scans every pixel of the image, and then based on the contrast, it decides whether or not to add a new vertex and color. It's like, what? I thought we were talking pixels here, right? But actually, I then used some mod tools, loaded these backgrounds, and enabled the wireframe mode, and saw that we are actually looking at geometry which has vertices there where the images have a lot of contrast, and then every vertex is colored. You know, vertices just in general don't only have positions; they also can have colors. So as you see, you have it's basically a colored mesh. But for me, it is very mind blowing, and I would never have expected this. And if you want to have more information, actually, there's another link there. And I tested it myself because you can just load these mod tools. And then, so I took an image I painted at some point. And indeed, this is maybe something you saw before. The Photoshop can give you something like that. It's called like a find edges filter or something. And these tools generate like this edge map first. And then based on that, you can tell how many polygons you want to have and so on. And then it will generate a little sphere for you, and you can really see here up there in the image where I don't have much detail, there's nothing going on. Here there is not much vertices, but where I have a lot of detail, then you see all these vertices generated there. Yeah, so based on the image, it generates the sphere and applies color, which is very nice. And then you can be in your little sphere and look around like a diorama. And it's a very efficient way. And what I like about this, apart from just being a fantastic idea, I think the person who invented this should get a Nobel Prize. Instead of storing billions, no, not billions maybe, but millions of pixels in the texture, you store just several thousands of vertices, so it's very efficient. And also in between, the in-between colors are just interpolated on the fly by the graphics card, so you don't have any compression artifacts. And just a little extra thing, of course, you cannot get as sharp and crisp images by that, like if you would use a texture, but this is a background, and just from a composition standpoint, background should stay in the background, you know, the cool stuff in front, like the ships and all the battles and stuff, this should be sharp. So there's also from a compositional point of view sense in that. So, so technique and art comes together to generate this fantastic child, and it's amazing. And if you want to have more information, again, you can click this read more thingy, which some people call link. And by the way, here, this rotating sphere also shows where the original image has not much detail. Down there, there's a lot of chunky triangles. But here, where they painted a lot, you can see that here, the sphere is very round because there's a lot of detail. I just can't stop looking at it and admiring these things. Okay, and the last point is injecting not yourself, but your computer in the rendering process to find out how stuff is done. And now we will go into a little bit of an adventure because it will partly be a live demo. I never did a live demo before, so hopefully it works. But before we come to that, just one thing, when you click here, you will find graphic studies, and maybe you saw these before. So here's a fantastic list, by the way. You can read for months in here, and when you click one of them, you'll find an article, for example, looking like this. So we see a lot of render frame buffers, a lot of detail here, and it starts and dissecting draw call, word draw call, how in that case, one frame of God of War is rendered, and describing, this is not done by me, by the way, this is just a fantastic resource by some other people, and what is it? I don't even know what this is, but it's all explained here, and it's just a fantastic resource, right? So just a huge article just for one frame, and remember, we render 60 of them usually in a game, right? So it's fantastic. I just show you this because all these these information, like all these textures, all these frame buffers, are gathered by using some tools. And I would like to present these tools to you today. So, and also this list is just amazing. It's a great resource to know. And I would like to talk about Intel GPA, RenderDoc, NVIDIA NSight, and the last one I just edited it here, GL Intercept. I used it once a long time ago. The first three are the more important ones. And all these tools are there they're actually there for evaluating your game's performance. So you can look at it and you can see, oh, there's some bottlenecks here, or the evil artists, they use too many polygons here, and here the shader's too expensive, all these things. But I use it mainly to just look at the draw calls, look at the textures, the meshes, and then try to find out how a certain effect is done, for example. So I use only 1% of the functionality of these tools, actually. And you may ask, yeah, well, Simon, why not using just one tool? Why must there be three? Would make this presentation shorter. The answer is that sometimes some tools work only with certain games. And actually today we will learn that on this specific PC, Intel GPA did not run for reasons. I don't know. I prepared some videos so we can still look at it. At my PC home it works. But this is a great example that sometimes you have your favorite tool. In my case it's actually Intel GPA, but it just does not run on some hardware. So you have to have alternatives, and that's why I would like to show you 3 of them. So no excuses. Okay, but the most importantly, and this is very important to me, of course we use this only for 2 things. We use these tools for admiring the work of others and for learning. And never ever should this be used to, I don't know, take out the textures, use it in your own game and sell it, or sell it as a texture pack or something like that. Sometimes you see these things going on in the internet and I really, really don't like it. So don't do that. It's just for learning. Okay. And the next slides are a little mini tutorial how to use these tools. And like I said, Intel GPA doesn't run on this PC, so we have to click links here, and actually here, up here, there are some little links, and these guide you to videos where I show how the tool is used. So here is the example of yes. By the way, oops. No, come on. Oh no, is there? Oh no, I thought there's an advertisement now, but I can't make it big. Why can't it make it big? Now it's bigger. Now it's super big. Okay, perfect. So, by the way, I have to go into my marketing mode. I made a game, Cozy Space Survivors. You can get it right now for 10% off. There's a sale. And the biggest USP, apart from is a cute little survivors-like, is it's short. It's made for people without much time, parents, game developers. And it just takes you 2 to 4 hours to complete, including achievement. Okay, so, and I would like to show you now how I try to inject GPA into this game actually. And the most important thing is, when you start it, you go into the settings, and then you have this setting here. That's very useful. Auto detect launch applications. Nowadays, we don't start games directly anymore. We always start them via Steam, usually. And this can be a problem when these programs try to inject themselves into the rendering process. There's a Steam in between, I don't like it. So it's a very nice option here, because then you don't start a game directly at all. You just enable this. And then, actually, I underlined it in the video as well, so we have a double underline now. And then you just leave it as is. And then you can start the game. In that case, I tried with my own game. And so I just will skip it here. Boop, there it starts. And when you see this interface here, then it means, oh, the program was successfully injecting itself. And it doesn't say it here, but when you press Ctrl F1, you can make this interface actually a little bit bigger, then it looks like this, and the next one looks like this, and there it actually says what button to press to capture a frame. Very useful information when you want to capture a frame. So the workflow is basically always program injects itself, you capture a frame, and then you have all the data to look at. So I will just start the game now. I press F12, then I close the game, and then we see, oh, there's the frame captured. So that's the workflow in general. Then you double click it, and then you see all the draw codes and all the details in this. Ignore all the details, you know, the most important thing is here. This is the main screen, and here are the draw codes, and I basically just click stuff and look at the result. Unfortunately, and that's a very nice but also bad but good for presentation purposes example, for some reason my game just renders black when you capture it. This is a great tool, a great example where you just need to use a different tool. For some reason, GPA, my beloved GPA, I use it usually for everything, that gave up on my own game. So what's going on here? And now we come to the live part, actually, so I can close this, because now I am desperately using RenderDoc. And RenderDoc looked like this. RenderDoc is a very known tool. Many tech art and programmers use it to look at their game. And here the most important thing is we go into this little launch tab, and then we just select our exe from our game, which is here. I already went into the folder, and we just select the exe. And here there is no auto detect launched game option, but they have an option, it's called capture child processes, and this can help when Steam is in the way. So I usually check it like this, and then you just press launch, boop, and then the game starts. When everything is successful, you see this little interface here. Again, F12, you press it, and so that's a good sign. And now what I will do, put my finger on F12, and now poof, start the game, go here, press F12. Goes very fast because the game is very small, not much data to transfer. And now we have the frame here. Double click it, and we will see here there's a little list. They call it IED, I call it draw call. I don't know. Why must programmers always put so complicated terms on everything? And when we click it here and switch into the texture viewer, because basically what we see on our screen is a texture called frame buffer. So now we see the game, and here step by step. First we start with there was nothing, and then there was light, and now it just goes every draw call back and forth, and just this alone is fantastic. I mean, here when you switch here, whoop, inputs, you actually see the textures which are currently used for rendering. Oh yeah, here's, for example, it's all upside down, but there's a little cat with a little helmet to survive in space. It's actually this one here. So you see what textures are used in this specific draw call. So that's nice to learn if you always wondered how to draw a little cat with a space helmet. And what I also like here is, or let me phrase it in a different way. The problem with these tools is that they often raise more questions than they answer. For example, what I like, for example, is we see that all these sprites are rendered one by one. So one draw call, one sprite. Okay. For some reason, I don't think too much about performance when it comes to 2D games. When it's 3D, I'm like, draw calls. But for 2D games, I'm always like, I don't know. It did not cross my mind. And so I was surprised to see that here, all these little hearts, they are rendered in one draw call. So there seems to be some optimization. This is, by the way, Godot engine. To be honest, I don't know if it's normal to do optimizations like this in games, but it's just nice to see. And what I also noticed, and I didn't expect that, is every character here is rendered in one draw call. And even more interesting to me, what you see right now is the shadow of the font. And then when we are finally here, boop, the whole font is there. Would you have expected? that's what that's what I mean when I say this raises more questions, because now you can go to a programmer and say, hey, why are all the characters are rendered in one draw call each, and then suddenly everything is there? That's weird. Also, a little detail I noticed while looking at this is the clock down here is rendered in just one draw call, and so boop, maybe numbers are cheaper. I don't know. It's a journey. So, but I think it can be an interesting tool to just look at your game, see if there are some bottlenecks, and also just have some interesting questions for your programmer friends. Okay, so but that's all about RenderDoc. Just wanted to show how this works. Yes, and yeah, again, this was just an example for using a different tool when, just in case, the Intel GPA doesn't work. But don't lose hope for Intel GPA, because I did another example with Elden Ring, and there it actually worked. So, but I found another very exciting, I mean, at least to me, example what can go wrong. So here again, I enabled the auto detect thingy, and then Elden Ring starts, and we see, voila, our little interface is here. Good. So it will work. So then actually Elden Ring starts, and we will see that there is no interface up here. So for some reason we lost connection, and it's the copy protection, it seems to me. So now I had to search how to remove copy protection from Elden Ring, and this is just another example what can go wrong. So sometimes it's not even the tool, it's something else. Sometimes I try, when it doesn't work, go into full screen, go into window mode, try if you can changing the renderer from OpenGL to DirectX or the other way around. I basically just click buttons until it works. And so in that case, in the case of Elden Ring, what I had to do is I go into the folder here where you have the Elden Ring exe, and then you have the start copy protected game exe down there, and you just rename the start copy protected game exe to some other name, just whatever. I just name it with an underscore in between. And then you rename the Elden Ring exe to what was the start copy protected game exe before. And to be sure, I went offline with my Steam profile before, just to make sure the Steam doesn't notice what I'm doing there. But this actually worked. And then I just, Intel GPA is still running in the background while waiting for applications. And then now, we have our little interface, and then actually Elden Ring is starting, boop, and then I'm loading, and then I'm here, and am I doing something? No? Yeah, and I'm just pressing F12 then here in this nice view, close the game, and then actually, we see it actually worked this time. And spoiler, there will be no black screen, everything will be good. So the program just did not like my own game. And here again, all the draw calls are here. It's not so important to understand all these things, but here is a timeline with all the draw calls. And what I'm usually doing, I'd select all the draw calls. So I try to select them here. It doesn't work. Then I select them up there, just drag and drop. And when all of them selected, then you have this little hidden button, which I actually here show resource table, very well hidden. And when you click it, you see all the resources of the game, which means meshes and textures mainly. Also, this is simply shaders, but I can't read those. So, and just this alone is a huge learning experience when you see all these textures, because now you can see how they work. For me, for example, I always ask myself, are they putting the, like in general, not just for Elden Ring, but in general, are they putting the effect textures on an atlas or not? How big are the textures? Are they using flipbooks for their flames, for example, or is it shader animated? I don't know. And it's just a joy to just look at all these things and discover how this game is rendered. Same for geometries. And this is also fantastic for character artists, just to check how does the topology look, how many polygons have the characters, is the optimization or not, how the stuff works. So here we look at this friendly little guy. Yeah, so I'm not a character artist. I can't judge if this is now good or bad, polygon wise and stuff like that. But it's just a fantastic experience to learn from them. And then also if you know or see some specific trick to discover his specific trick. So that's it's just really cool. And then here you have the textures. Oh, and then one thing, yes, this is sometimes very nice. So here, when this only works for textures, not for meshes. There's a button called Resource History. It shows you the history of this specific texture, meaning in which draw call it was used. So in that case, in these two. And then you can click them and switch back to the list with all the draw calls, which is here, API log. And then you see, aha, it was draw call 928. And sometimes this is just nice to see at which position in the frame you are right now, and then you can go back and forth and actually see what's rendered before and what's rendered after. And I'm doing this here, and I'm wondering why I don't see it, because we don't see it right now, which is interesting. But another detail which is nice, we see some pink pixels there, because we can here change how we want to render the draw call, and we can say original color, make it pink, or make it a pink wireframe. So you see in this image there where exactly your stuff is rendered. And sometimes it's, for example, interesting to see if you see an object and the wireframe is one solid color, then maybe there should have been some LODs used, because you know, there are quite some polygons, some dense polygon count there. Yeah, so this is just some interesting stuff. So this is Intel GPA. I just wanted to prove that it works actually. And where is the slides here? So let's go into full screen mode again. Boop. And yes, that's that. RenderDoc we already saw. Just if you're at home and looking at the slides, again, up there's a link with video where I show how it works. And now we go to NVIDIA NSight, another program which is even more fun. By the way, one note I need to make. Unfortunately, the RenderDoc does not have such a huge overview about all the textures and meshes. That's a bit unfortunate. So that's why I really like to use GPA. Or also NSight is also very useful for that. So and now this will be live, and now I really hope it works. So first we have to close Steam. Boop. It's a bit hard when you use French UI, and I'm not sure I'm clicking the right buttons here. So you start NVIDIA NSight. And this time we don't start a game, we actually start Steam with that. So here there is a default project. I just double click it and then this opens, and here I already put it in, Steam Extra, and we say automatically connect no. And then we start it, boop. And if everything goes well, it should just work now. When we start Elden Ring, it should hopefully just work. Let's see. Because I did not remove the copy protection so far, because the Intel GPA stuff was not a live demonstration. So let's see if NVIDIA NSight can handle this even without my little change. Otherwise we can, of course, I guess. I don't understand French. That's okay. What is this? Why should we join the family of Microsoft? What is this? Okay, let us just guess this is the copy protection issue. So let's just do the following. We go offline, which should be this, right? Good. Then we click here, properties, go into the files, boop, boop, rename the evil file into something different. 2. Oh, no. Oh. Okay, like this. Then we copy the name and rename the Elden Ring exe into that without the 111. So, boop. Okay, so let's see if this works. Should we? yes, it worked. We have this little debug thing up there, the little hit F11 to frame capture. This is a good sign usually. And now, actually it starts in full screen. It's interesting. At home I only start in window. So let's see. Now, yes, I don't know, what do you say? Let's go. And this will look similar to the other programs, but it has a little extra finesse. There will be a scrubbing bar on the bottom where we can just scrub through and then see all the draw calls, which is a fantastic thing the other tools don't offer. So let's just look at the tree from here and then try if we can see if Elden Ring is really well optimized. Actually, people told me it's not that well optimized, so don't be too hard on them. But still a fantastic game. So, so now we are here and we have the scrubbing bar, and we can. Isn't that fantastic? And this is so cool. I mean, really, it's so fantastic for learning to just see how game render. And also interesting, this is, as far as I can tell, the shadow map. I guess it's a cascade shadow mapping because we see several things there. And it's already, there's the character down there. Whoop. And we are here now at 1/4 of the frame. So it seems like that just calculating shadows is 1/4 of the frame. Just a nice learning in general, right? Just to see how it works. And then we can see, and then, oh, look, they start with the grass. By the way, you can scrub here or you can press the cursor keys. And then you can see, and then, so they don't start with the character, they start with everything else. And, oh, there's the spider web up there. Oh, that's interesting, actually, because, see, another question raised. Usually transparent things are rendered after all the opaque stuff. I expected the spider web being transparent, and I'm really wondering why it's rendered now. So maybe I have to write an email to Mr. Elden Ring.
After the talk, someone came to me and said that the reason the spiderwebs in Elden Ring are rendered so early in the frame is that they use a masked blend mode instead of transparency, and that's indeed true. We can see here it looks a bit chunky up close, and yeah, it's just a masked blend mode. But I wanted to point out that there is indeed some transparency made possible by differing. You can see here these pixel patterns where some pixels are just left out, and this can, we can see this here down here with the other strings, appear like a little bit of a transparency. So this is kind of a cool effect to avoid real transparencies and still get a little bit of transparent effect. And I think it looks quite okay here in Elden Ring, especially if you don't focus too much. But I was my eyes were tricked basically. And I was, it is this, or the reason why this was a topic to me is that at some point I wrote an article about the spiderwebs in Diablo 3, sorry, and here this is one from Sacred 2, and we can see here it's quite chunky, it doesn't blend in with the environment very well, and this is masked blend mode, so there's no transparency. And then I saw them in Diablo 3, and here they are nicely blended with the environment, very soft appearing, and that's why I liked it so much. And in Elden Ring I think it's a good mix of both. They achieved it very nicely, especially with the differing, and then also of course the anti-aliasing, because as you can see here there is no anti-aliasing at all happening, at least not much. So yeah, so that's of course then the reason why it looks nicer in Unreal. And one note, as I said, usually the transparent objects are rendered after all the opaque objects, but there is a new technology slowly creeping in. In Unreal it's still an experimental feature, but here in these slides, that's not Unreal, that's another engine, they show what the problem is with normal transparencies. Sometimes the order is just incorrect and it looks a bit weird, should look more like this. and they implemented order independent transparency. OIT is the short form to sort the transparency per pixel. It's more expensive, but then you have good sorting for the transparencies. And I looked it up. So here there is actually an article from 8 days ago where someone tested the AOT feature in Unreal, and it's still an experimental feature. And here this answer is interesting. It breaks the additive blend mode entirely. Additive materials are just opaque when this feature is enabled. So you can see that even though other engines have this feature enabled for many years already, Unreal is a bit slow when it comes to that, and it's still experimental. So that's just for you to know. So in the future, it may be that actually these spiderwebs could be maybe actually rendered earlier because they are then correctly sorted, and I don't know if it's then still necessary to separate the opaque rendering from the transparency. We will see how this turns out when, for example, Unreal has it as a normal feature.
Also interesting for character artists, like how the characters are rendered. Like, is this just one mesh? Is there several meshes? Are there arms below the cloth? Like, for example, here they render these little rings there here, and I think we don't see them in the game. Actually, it's hidden below the wardrobe, so could be some point for optimization. Also here the legs or whatever this is. So yeah, it's just nice to see. And oh, we don't. I was pretty sure that each eyeball was rendered in a single draw call when I did the frame capture the last time. Now I'm not sure. Oh yeah, here. Interesting, right? Why are they separate? I would have expected it's one rigged mesh, maybe, and then you render. So all of these questions pop up. So I'm sorry, I leave you with more questions than answers actually. But and what I also find very, very nice to see, we learn in theory often, oh, there's occlusion culling and there's distance culling and all these optimization techniques. And then you look at this here and you see that a lot of stuff, like for example, this is rendered even though we don't see it. And I would just have expected, oh, it's an object, it's distance sorted, and then just blah, blah. But no, not happening. So it's just also an interesting test is your gained optimization knowledge actually applies to real game development. Often it doesn't. It's really depressing, to be honest. And then we go here through, and then we are at some point, and there's so much stuff happening, I don't even know what's going on, but it's just fascinating. But also, you can now, when you are done having fun with scrubbing through all these things, you can go to the, where is it actually? Here. You can go here, press OK. This is the dialog from NSight before, where we started the game. And here now, we have this attach thing. And we can attach ourselves now to the process we started here, this one. Just double click. And now, oh, what there was an. I ignore this. So here we have this view now, and we can scrub through the timeline here as well, and it is updated in the other window. And the most important part for me here is here we have vertex shader, pixel shader. So you can, for this very specific draw call, click here and then see the texture used here if you want. But more importantly, because I'm lazy, I like to go here, all resources. And this is a similar view which we saw before. And then we can say small thumbnails or thumbnails. And again, we have a lot of textures here, and it's just so fun to look at these. Here, for example, all the icons from Elden Ring in a wonderful atlas, nicely optimized. Thumbs up for that. But then for me as a VFX artist, of course, very nice. They have here, they have nice textures for their smoke. And just a learning, for example, if you do a smoke puff, the natural idea could be that you start with a blank frame and then the little smoke puffs get bigger and bigger and bigger and then fades out, right? But they start directly with a kind of big image. It maybe gives a little pop because they don't want to have to build up. They want to show the poof explosion immediately, so they just start with that frame. Or maybe they fade, actually they fade it in the shader or something like that. So, but it's just interesting to see how they do it actually. And then what else do we have? I don't know. Yeah, a lot of stuff. Nice normal maps. Do we see maybe some character stuff here? It's oh, there's a butterfly. So yeah, that's basically what I wanted to show you, because this is basically what I do when I try to find stuff out. I look at all these things and try to gain knowledge out of it. As far as I can tell, I'm kind of sure that here, unfortunately, you cannot see the geometries. This is just texture stuff, and the buffers here, I mean, maybe these are this could be like geometry buffers, but we don't see, we only see lists. We can't do anything with that. So in that specific case, we can go here into frame debugger, geometry, and there we see at least the geometry for the current frame, which is in that case rien. That's wait, is there nothing? Ah, here there is something. So let me, can I get this out? Okay, we found, oh, it's grass, which also is an interesting topic, because sometimes when you have these grass planes and you put them like this and this and this and this, they look a bit not so good when you look from top, because then you see all the planes like looking at you, and it's a bit annoying. So also interesting how they do their grass, and they use real little grass thingies here. So yeah,
just as a stronger visualization. So here we see the grass very nicely, looks very nice from this position, but actually when we look, and it's nicely made, but if you look from a certain angle, for example here, we can now see, one second, that we're looking straight down on a grass plane, and especially in motion, it looks a bit weird sometimes. So yeah, but again, I think it works very well here in Elden Ring, and you really have to, on purpose, break it basically by looking that close on this detail.
Okay, as you can see, I can waste hours on that, just looking at all these things, and maybe it's inspiring to you to just learn from these things. And so that's why I wanted to do this little demo, and now we can just close the game, and it's done here. Merci Elden Ring. Okay, so and now we are almost at the end actually. So let me just make it big here again. So no, da. Yes. Okay, so that was NVIDIA NSight. So that was my talk. If you want to contact, if you have any questions, here's my link tree. There's all the information about socials, and this is the link for the slides. It's called Toulouse Gamedev 24, and then my name. And the Schreibt is écrire in German. So Simon écrire. Yes. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed it. And questions are, if there are questions, it's fine too, I guess. But again, I raised more questions than I can answer here, so don't expect too many answers here.
Qui veut poser des questions en anglais ou en français?
Swedish girls. You can you showed us how to see the textures and the geometry. In this application for animated geometries, is there a way to visualize the timeline of the animated models, or only that's snapshot?
It's one frame. You really gather just one frame, but you already saw how much information.
Yeah, of course. Because talking of VFX, you are interested in how things move over time. So that was my question.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think, I'm not sure I think some of these programs, but to be honest, I never used it. They have sometimes things like capture me 10 frames in a row. But this is more important for people who actually look at performance stuff and see a spike maybe, and then they want to compare frames and stuff like that. For me, it's usually enough to see just one frame. For example, in Elden Ring, sometimes I saw a nice effect, and I was just like, hey, are they using a flipbook? Or are they using a static texture and then wiggle it around with a shader? And then it's enough for me to say, flipbook, okay, good. Okay. Question answered here. Yeah.
Maybe my situation is like some other people here. So considering I'm a new game developer, I'm focusing on a lot of things because I'm doing it alone, but VFX and other visual aspect, I'm not really familiar with everything, like every vocabulary you used in your presentation. Do you think it's mandatory for my game is in low poly, so not really that much design, not heavy graphically speaking?
Yeah.
So do you think it's mandatory for me at some point to learn all the vertices, how it works, how it's rendered, and everything? Or since I'm using mostly asset for VFX and low poly models, do you think I can like finish my game without taking too much, learning too much everything presented today? Or
yes, of course. Usually people ask about performance when they have bad performance. As long as your game runs, it's good. And when you run into trouble, but that was actually not the main talk from my point. Of course, these tools are used to optimize and to find bottlenecks, but and this is useful when you run into these problems. As long as you don't, it's fine. And for me, it's more like when you see something in a game and you want it for your game, but you don't know how it works, then these tools just help you. But as long as you don't have this desire, everything is good. And as long as your performance is good, all is fine as well. So don't worry. Don't be intimidated. It's all very, very niche interest and just finding out cool tech art stuff.
Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Vous pouvez poser des questions en français si ça vous fait peur de parler en anglais aussi. Peut-être dans le chat. Il y a des questions. J'ai du mal à les charger, donc je vais venir sur le PC. Alors, quelqu'un demande si tu as des recommandations pour réduire le nombre de draw calls sur Quest 2 en utilisant Unreal.
Yeah, actually the latest game I worked on was for VR, was on Quest 2, was in Unreal. So we had exactly these problems. And our solution was a lot of instancing, like combining draw calls, a lot of not only having one texture, but putting several textures on an atlas and reusing them so that you can render several meshes in one frame. But yeah, it's not so easy. It's a lot of work, a lot of optimization, a lot of time spent into it. And there's one thing we learned, and that was again like surprising, because we learn there are draw calls and too many are bad. Okay, you find this in any document, but not many documents talk you, how many can you have? And what we found out, and maybe other developers can confirm this, that on Quest 2, when you hit a certain point of draw calls, and for us it was, I think, 150 to 200. At some point, a very specific point, the draw calls get super expensive. We tried this by just rendering boxes, so not too much geometry, but we saw, they render in so and so milliseconds, and then it was multiplied by 5 times the cost, just by more boxes above, I don't know, 120 or 200. I don't have the correct number now. I have no idea why. I couldn't find out why. It is nowhere documented. I wish the engineers of Meta would like, oh yeah, by the way, be careful, right? Our draw calls get very expensive. Interestingly, I could not see this behavior for translucent stuff. So what concerns me as a VFX artist is mostly translucent, for fire, explosions, whatever. There I could not see this behavior, but for the opaque rendering, it was like that. Yes, so we really had to combine as much as we could to reduce draw calls. And again, combining textures, combining meshes, using instancing a lot, and also deleting stuff. Just no, we don't need this. Oh no, this really. And then what we also did is we did little switches, and for quest 3, for example, for the third quest, then we enable a little bit more stuff than for quest 2. But it's a bit sad, and yeah, it was a surprise for us all. So I know what you are going through right now.
Moi j'ai une question. Là tu as présenté des outils pour les jeux PC. Est-ce qu'on peut utiliser d'autres outils ou des outils en complément pour des jeux console ou mobile?
I'm very certain, I never did it for myself, but I'm very certain that there are tools like that. And also these tools often come with like a connect to a remote instance. So my assumption, but again, I never did it myself, would be that you can maybe run this on an Xbox and then you connect to it and then you do it. For mobile, I guess Android Studio and Apple have their own tools for these things, I would guess. Meta, for example, brings own profiling tools. When you work for Meta, then you have this stuff. But I also used RenderDoc with Meta, and there actually it was like you are connected with your Meta Quest with a USB cable to your PC, and then I could execute builds from RenderDoc on the Quest and then capture on the Quest there. So yeah, but it's a pain, really. Just don't develop for other platforms. It's really, it's so much more work. Yeah.
Hello, thanks for the presentation. It was so entertaining
and messy
and funny to watch. I have one question. I'm not very sure of the definition of draw call. Is it when the processor asks for an asset into the hard drive to the memory? That's it?
No, the draw call is the call for a draw, which means it's like, hey, render this. At this point, the geometry and all the stuff is already in memory. So before that, there's a setup. This is very, very interesting to see in RenderDoc and all these tools in this little timeline you saw before. Sometimes you see there's a draw call, another one, there's a little gap in between, not too much, and then there's a huge gap, and then the next draw call. And this is usually means, there was a completely different object rendered, and there had to be some setup done. For example, loading stuff into the, I mean, usually the data should already be loaded in the memory, but the draw call has to be set up. They call it binding buffers and binding textures, all this thing. Don't ask me what exactly it means, but it's stuff programmers like to do, and it's necessary to bring stuff on the screen. And this costs a lot of time for some reason. And the draw call happens afterward. When everything is done, everything is ready, then you say, draw. And then you have this huge list.
I forgot to mention that I actually wrote a whole article about this topic. So when you scroll down here, there is the RenderHell 2 article, and if you scroll down here, you'll find book 2, which explains the pipeline. And here I made a lot of effort in animating this in a funny way. So here, for example, there's the application asking to render something, so it makes a draw call, and then the driver is in between, and then I explain how the driver handles the command buffer and all these things. So you can go down here and you will find a lot of little animations explaining how the rendering process works. And yeah, so this would be a nice addition to answering this question we just heard about what a draw call actually is. And here you find even more information about how all the rendering works. It's a bit old though. The article is I think 9 years old now, and a lot of stuff is progressing, of course, with Vulkan technology and stuff like that. But for a basic understanding, I think it's still valid.
And yeah, it's as I explained, there's no clear guidance what is too much, what is not too much, because it also depends on hardware. I heard that, I don't know, older hardware like Game Boy Advance or not Game Boy Advance, GameCube or something like that, they were very good in handling many draw calls for some reason. And then you go on PC and you can have less. I mean, back then at least, you know, in the time. So you cannot assume performance. You can only measure it. It's a bit annoying, but it's the truth. And so you just go on your hardware with your game, and then you look at stuff and optimize if you can.
So can we say maybe that the draw call activity reflects the activity of the processor and the GPU, or it's not related at all?
It's usually what you want is you make a draw call and then the GPU goes really to work. This is actually what instancing is, for example, trying to say I'm doing a call and I say, instead of rendering one little box and another box and another box and each box has one draw call, you say, hey, one draw call, render 100 boxes. Because usually this communication between CPU and GPU is very expensive. They are like, you know, they have to send a lot of emails back and forth, and it costs a lot of time, and it's more efficient to let the GPU render a lot of stuff at once, because the GPU is so much faster than the CPU usually when it can do stuff in parallel, and best case same stuff like for instancing. And yeah, so you want to optimize for that. But again, when you do a game and everything runs fine, there's a term, it's called premature optimization, and this should be avoided. When you are concerned too much about this, you try to optimize your game, but there's not even a problem. And yes, maybe it's not perfectly optimized. We saw in Elden Ring, sometimes there are meshes behind the wall, but hey, maybe it's not that much of a problem. And instead of spending 300 more hours into trying a new sorting algorithm, maybe it just works. So it's good enough often. Yeah.
Thanks.